for a couple of years, I had buddies and people telling me, hey, you should be a guide. And I was like, nah, I don't want to turn it into a job. Then it started getting to the point where I was fishing with people and I was getting to see them catch that first snook or that first tarpon or maybe that personal best snook. And it was like a light switch for me. It went from wanting to be the guy fishing and catching all the fish to really enjoying watching other people do it and watching the excitement they had when they landed, those fish. So then I started getting the idea, the ball starts rolling and I'm like, maybe I should get my captain's license. Hey, this is Captain Justin Napior. Welcome to the Tom Rolled Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast today. Today's guest has been suggested to me by a number of people who have enjoyed fishing with him, enjoy his story, and thought that he would be an outstanding guest. And they were right. Captain Justin Napior guides in the 10,000 Islands area, and he loves fishing for tarpon and snook with artificial lures. And he was a great guest. We talked about a lot of different things about how to get into the guiding business, how he got his captain's license, how he got started kind of on a whim, and how he is making this a full-time profession. And I really enjoyed this conversation with my friend, Justin Napior. Justin, how are you, man?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Good deal. I appreciate you being on. How's fishing been?
Fishing's been killer. I mean, I'm over here in the Naples, Mark Weiland, 10,000 Islands area, and it's been hot, but it's been on fire. It's been really good.
What have you been catching, snook and redfish and tarpon, or?
I specialize in snook and tarpon mostly, so that's pretty much what I target all year round. I do catch a little bit of everything, snook, tarpon, redfish, trout, but I try to specifically specialize in the bigger snook and the tarpon fishing, artificial live bait.
Really? And do you have some fly fishermen too, or mostly artificial and live bait?
Mostly artificial and live bait.
Cool. And what about those two fish do you like the most? Why is that? Why are those the ones that you gravitate to almost immediately? You're like, snook and tarpon, man. That's it. Snook and
oh man, it goes. How far back do you want to go?
As far back as we can go.
Well, so when I was a kid, bass fishing was where it was at for me. Mm-hmm. I watched Bill Dance outdoors growing up, and I'd go behind my grandparents' house, and I'd largemouth bass fish, and always topwater. Loved topwater bite. So one day I'm fishing with my buddy back then. I'm probably 7 to 10 years old, and the sun's going down. It's about dusk. I knew I had to be home soon, and I made that classic one last cast. So I sling my bait caster out there with this yellow topwater popper, and I'm working that thing, and it's 7 to 6 feet out in front of me. So I had one more pop left. I pop it, and this fish just hammers this topwater. I look at my buddy, and we look at each other, and we're like, this got to be the biggest bass ever. And I set the hook, cock back on it, and that head comes out of the water, gills flared out, head shaking, and my buddy goes, dude, that's a big snook. And I'm like, what's a snook? Like, I've only bass fished. And he's like, that's a really big snook. And, I've got 15, maybe 20 pound mono. And I get the fish in, and we land it. And luckily my grandparents' good friend lived right behind us, and he was a photographer. So he's got a picture of this. And I'm trying to find a picture. I was trying to find it all day today. There's a picture of me holding it, like I said, maybe 7 to 10 years old. And I'm holding this snook, and I don't remember how big it was. If I had to guess, maybe around the 30-inch mark, 28 would be my guess, because I was used to catching, 3 to maybe 5 pound bass. So This was like a monster, and that day was the turning point for me. I was like, all right, bass are fun, but they're nowhere near as fun as these snooks. So how do we catch more of these? And then luckily his dad saltwater fished a bit. So he taught us at 7 to 10 years old how to throw a cast net. So we're throwing 6-foot cast nets on these, Mayan cichlids and whatnot. And we're sending those things out on floats and catching bigger bass now. Now we're catching those 6 to 8-pound, like really nice largemouths. And then we started figuring out, okay, the snooks are hanging around the dock pilings. So let's float, that float all the way back underneath the pilings. Then we started dialing in the snook. And then from there, it's been an obsession, just snook. And then there was actually tarpon in that lake too. We figured out how to kayak out to the middle of the lake, drop our baits, and then come back in and just sit there and wait. And we were jumping, 50, 60-pound tarpon in this big lake as kids.
Wow.
And then that was the fish that was the life changer for me with fishing. It was like, all right, I love these fish. I need to target these more. And then from there, it was just a lot of John boat adventures with my buddies with a trolling motor and a battery and, going against the current, running out of battery, using the dang landing net to paddle back and stuff. Just crazy kid adventures. And then to get where I'm at today, we fast forward a decent amount of years, and it started with me with Salt Strong, the guys at Salt Strong, Joe and Luke.
Okay. Yeah, I love those guys.
Salt Strong comes along. A buddy of mine adds me to that site. And Joe and Luke start doing this online fishing tournament. So it's basically, post your pick from the weekend. And it was a voting system. People go on there and they just vote for your fish. And I was always posting, decent snook and tarpon, usually good sized snook. So after a few months of being on there, I became the snook guy. Like everyone's like, oh, Justin's going to post his snook. And I was like, oh, I get lucky. Everyone gets lucky. And then that turned into people, sending me a message saying, hey, I'm going to be in your area, on business. Could I hop on the boat with you? And I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, let's go. And then I put them on maybe their personal best snook or maybe their first tarpon. And then that slowly turned into people saying, hey, why don't you become a guide? And I was like, for years, my response was always, I don't want to turn fishing into a job.
Yeah.
I like the fun aspect of it.
So at this point, what are you doing for a living?
Auto repair. Okay. Did auto repair from the time I was 17 years old up until currently, pretty much up until my adulthood. I've always been a big muscle car fan. So grew up working on cars and fishing. And then just more as I got older, I also rode professional BMX back in the day. Yeah? So I'm an adrenaline junkie. So that's where the fishing kind of comes in with my style, with the sight fishing and the thrill of the hunt, because it gives me that adrenaline rush that I want. So that's where I gravitated towards fishing. I got a little bit older and I was like, all right, I got to lay down the BMX stuff. Can't afford to hurt myself. So got really back into fishing and just working out and trying to be healthier. And then just did auto repair. Well, I get off track a little bit here. I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're saying that you didn't want to turn fishing into your
didn't want to turn fishing into a job. So for a couple of years, I had buddies and people telling me, hey, you should be a guide. And I was like, I don't want to turn it into a job. Then it started getting to the point where I was fishing with people and I was getting to see them catch that first snook or that first tarpon or maybe that personal best snook. And it was like a light switch for me. It went from wanting to be the guy fishing and catching all the fish to really enjoying watching other people do it and watching the excitement they had when they landed, those fish. So then I started getting the idea, the ball starts rolling and I'm like, maybe I should get my captain's license. And at this time I had a 1994 Hughes Bay Fisher, which is a great boat. Love that thing. My daughter was about 2 years old. It was 18 foot. Luckily for me, my wife and both my little girls love being on the water and fishing. So my wife back then was like, hey, we should try to get a bigger boat. And I was like, well, I'm not against that idea. So then the ball's rolling about getting my captain's license. So I'm like, well, if I get my captain's license and I do 1 or 2 trips a month, our boat's paid for. So she's like, well, that's a good idea. So I got my license and started working on that. Found a newer boat because I was pricing out, a new outboard, a trolling motor. Really wanted a power pole back then.
So what, it was like what 20. Size boat did you have in mind? You going from an 18-foot boat to what?
So I went from the 18-foot skiff to a bay boat. And I went with the small one. I went with like a 20-foot bay boat, which is still small for a bay boat.
So like making that decision, you wanted more live wells. Was that a big factor? And
yes, I wanted to focus more on the live bait stuff because that was the guarantee for me to put my people on fish, and then more room for my daughter time to run around and, you know, do beach days, just be able to go offshore and grab bait if I need to, you know, do some of that near shore fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, bay boat's gonna be perfect. You know, reliability. I wanted a 4-stroke. So I went, got the bay boat. And then that opened up a lot for me because I was able to make those further runs with the better fuel economy and get the bait in the morning because it was able to handle a little more chop.
Yeah.
And then, from there it grew.
Yeah. And so did you, let's talk about getting your captain's license, because that's interesting. A lot of people are that listen to this podcast are thinking about, you know, being a guide or exploring the opportunity of quitting their job. And there's a lot of things that have changed between the time that I got my captain's license and today. There are a tremendous amount of opportunities online to I don't know. Tell me what you know about getting the captain's license, how you did it, and maybe you know other ways to do it as well.
So the way I did it, I was working full time. So I was Monday through Friday, you know, 8 to 5. And then I had my daughter. So I didn't have a lot of free time. I couldn't afford, I didn't want to do the evening class. You know, I didn't want to be in a class at 10 o'clock at night. I was getting up at 5 in the morning every day and doing my morning workout and then going on to work. And for me to stay out till 10 o'clock at school, I knew I wouldn't be able to focus. So there's a class out of Key West and it's all online. You pay for the course and you study and you take it on your own time. And then when you
who runs that?
I believe it's called some best of Key West or something like that.
Okay, is that? I can't
remember exactly.
Do you remember a name, Flynn Smith?
That sounds familiar. That might be it.
That's who I went to his class, and pretty much every captain that I know went to his class. Like
it might be he was definitely an OG for sure because he was super cool. And like when he answered the phone, he referred to you as captain right away. He's like, "All right, captain, let's go." He was a really cool guy. So basically, I had to study. So I study. And then whenever you're ready for the test, you just drive down to the Keys and you take the test. So that was the best for me because of my schedule. You know, I'd be on my lunch break studying, and Saturday morning before the kids got up, I'd study and just study until I was ready to take it. And I overstudied. When I went down there, I was fully confident. I passed it first try. And then I was psyched from there. And then I went on to.
How did you know that you were ready? Like, I mean, when you're studying, like, I don't know, it takes me back to college. Like when there was a deadline, you know, you're going to go take that test whether you're ready or not. But if it's all completely up to you, and this is super important to you, it would seem like you would over prepare. But then other people, like, I don't know, might underestimate the test because the test is hard. I mean, it is. It's not about how to be a bay boat guide. It's about how to be a captain of a boat that you're probably never going to run in most situations. And it's comprehensive knowledge of things that you and I in a skiff or a bay boat or a 36 or something like that, we're never going to encounter a boiler room fire. Like,
no,
you know, like, I don't know. I mean, how did you know that you were ready to take it?
So I got to the point where I would make a little test for myself and I would go through it without looking at the book. And I was just nailing every question. I was like, okay, I've got all the questions down. I tested myself on plotting. I was like, I got the plotting down. I'd have my wife. I made little flashcards. I'd have her go through and just, you know, quiz me. And I was nailing it. And I was like, okay, I got to make the phone call and I got to just schedule my test. So I call them and I say, I want to take it, you know, this day. Now I've got that locked in that day. So now I'm like, okay, we gotta get this going because I'm confident, but I got to make sure I'm completely dialed. So that's what I did. I just got to the point of when my wife was testing me, I was nailing everything. I was nailing the plotting. And I was like, okay, it's fresh in my brain. I got to go. Got to go take it and get it done with. So I did that and it was great. My wife actually got hers as well.
Oh yeah. Great.
Yeah. She got hers last year, end of last year.
And what does she plan on doing with it?
She wants to get into yacht sales. She wants to get into selling the boats but she wants to look good on paper and know how to run the boat. she knows how to run boats, but she wants to look legit on paper. So now she's a captain, so she looks legit on paper.
Yeah, that's great. And in your area, there are a tremendous amount of boats and yachts for sale. That's probably a great business to be.
Yeah, it's pretty much here. And then I guess Fort Lauderdale's obviously huge too.
Yeah.
So those are pretty much the two main areas in Florida.
So many boats. You got every house has got 2 or 3 boats behind it if you get on that canal system.
And I got a couple of buddies that are in the boating industry. And right now with everything going on, people are buying boats like crazy because it's the best way to get away from everyone.
I know. Isn't that funny though? Because it seems like right at the beginning, it seemed like, everybody was kind of locking up, like no spending because nobody knew what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then all of a sudden the boat sales just take off and
skyrocketed.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
It's good. Yeah, it makes our industry. Hey, people are boat sales. I've gotten a couple from my buddy Josh. He's recommended people that they're just buying their first boat. They want to get into fishing. They don't know what they're doing. They're like, hire Justin, take them out, show them around, show them how to drive their boat a little bit better, and also show them how to fish the area. There's a lot to learn. That's
a interesting subject that maybe we can talk about for a few minutes. Is like, you get somebody that doesn't know much about boating, and they have money, they want a boat, and they have a family. Like, I don't know. Somebody told me one time a piece of information that I've kept, and I'll tell it to everybody. Like, you're looking for a boat. First of all, every boat is a compromise. So you're never going to find the perfect boat. In other words, you're never going to find a boat that'll float in 4 inches of water to go fish for tailing redfish and be able to cross the Gulf Stream on the worst day. Like, so you're going to have to compromise something. Which of those two things do you want to do more of? Like, how when you're talking to these people, how do you kind of coach them into what boat they should be getting?
A lot of the guys want the cruiser and just dabble in fishing. A lot of the guys that I've had sent to me are more like, hey, I just want to cruise with my family or cruise with my wife, and I want to dabble in fishing. So I'm like, okay, no reason to get super serious. Get a mid-sized bay boat. You can do a little bit of everything. You can go offshore a little bit, do the inshore stuff. If it drafts 10, 12 inches, you're fine. I was like, definitely throw a trolling motor and a power pole on there, because power pole or key wading's a big thing in our area. That's the beach hangout. So a lot of people slide up on the beach, put your power pole down, your boat just sits there and you can hang out. So I tell a lot of the guys, if you're planning on doing the key wading thing, a power pole is going to be your best friend, because it just makes anchoring up your boat a breeze. And then when you're fishing, it makes it a breeze. Yeah. So I always tell them mid-sized bay boat, definitely invest in the trolling motor, definitely invest in the power pole. And then most guys were like, yes. And then the guys that maybe don't want to spend that kind of money, because both of those things together are pricey, I'll say, go with the trolling motor, because you can always, do the GPS spot lock stuff. So they can kind of do one and the same. But my trolling motor probably has quadruple the hours that my engine has on it. I'm a big trolling motor fan. Yeah. Well, I troll a lot. In
that 10,000 island area, that you have an endless amount of shorelines to, I mean, seriously, like an endless, it's not called 10,000 islands for no reason. Like
no.
Do you think there are 10,000 islands there?
There's gotta be. I mean, I read somewhere one time and it made me like almost kind of bummed out. I read somewhere that you can fish down there your entire life and you cannot cover every shoreline. And it sunk in. I was like, man, I could literally win the lottery tomorrow and be independently wealthy and go fish down there every day. And there's going to be shorelines that I can't cover because I'm going to get old and die. And I'm just like, I got to get out there more. I got to explore more. I love exploring.
It's easy to get lost there. I mean, there and other areas. Do you see that?
You can get turned around.
Yeah. It's pretty easy too.
I've seen it a little bit with, jet skis and a little bit with the kayaks without GPS. The GPS technology is unreal nowadays. Right. I feel like it's really, if you have a good GPS in your boat, it's tough to get turned around. You can easily find your way back. Yeah. But yeah, as a kid, spending time in that area on canoes and stuff like that. Yeah. Without the GPS, it's easy to be like, that mangrove line looks just like that one. Which one did we come in?
Yeah. The first time that I ever kind of went into an area like that, you come through this creek and you're like, oh, this will be easy. I'll just look for the same creek, on the way back. And then you kind of just get a little bit off and you turn around and look, and it's like, where's that creek? Like, we better stop. I mean, if you know enough, you're like, okay, wait, hold on. We're about to get ourselves in big trouble here. We better stop, get some kind of bearing on where this creek is, because once you get out of a direct line to where you can see it, man, that whole shoreline looks unbroken. I mean, it looks like there's not a creek there. And that's how you can easily get turned around. You do that twice. You go through one creek and then you hit another little creek, and now it's like, where
am I?
Am I?
It's funny you mentioned creeks. So what I really try to specialize in and really sell my clients, not just a fishing trip, but a fishing adventure. I like to get in these backcountry creeks and bays in my skiff. Tight creeks. I like catching tarpon in these 6 foot, 7 foot wide creeks, and I'll go all the way up them. I'll go in them and I'll explore and I'll figure out where these fish are sitting. And when I get guys that can throw artificial really well, that's where I'll take them, because it is an adventure. No matter who you are, whether you live up north, you live down here, it's an adventure getting back in those Everglades back bays and creeks. And that's what I like to do.
You have some that'll open up into a little lake, right?
Exactly, which can be great.
Yeah.
In summer and winter. And if it gets rainy season like right now, they really are on fire. Yeah. But you gotta have a boat to get you back there. That's where you said compromise about boats. I'm lucky my wife likes boats, because I actually have 2 boats. I have my bay boat still that I've had for 5 years, and then I just got a skiff again last year, and that has been a game changer for me. Having the skiff back in my life, I missed it so much. That thing's unreal.
So in your area, you can, a lot of people may not have fished the 10,000 Islands, but there's several different boat ramps that you can kind of trailer a little skiff like that too. And then, you don't have to run across big water to get to a lot of it. And you kind of use the car and the trailer to move from place to place. So you can fish in a tiny little boat in some of those places like you're talking about, right?
Yeah. It's nice because like you said, there's multiple boat ramps. You can launch out of Goodland, which if you're from here, that's kind of the beginning of the 10,000 Islands, even though technically they start in the Naples, Marco Island area. If you're local, we just call it, from Goodland down, you're basically 10,000 Islands. So you can launch out of Goodland. You can launch out of Port of the Islands, which puts you right on the edge of the Everglades National Park. And then you can actually launch out of, Chokoloskee or Everglades City, and then you're smack dab in the middle of the Everglades.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know how to,
so cool. I
love it down there.
Yeah.
If you don't know the backwater, then that's the best way to do it. You can actually get from Goodland to Chokoloskee without running in the Gulf if you know the waters. But you gotta know the waters, because there's a lot of unmarked bays. There's no channel. There's no marking anything. You just gotta know the routes.
Mm-hmm. So this fishing that's getting you really excited right now, of going back into these creeks and finding these little lakes and stuff like that. When you get back in there, you're finding tarpon and snook in clear water, or what does it look like when you?
More tannic, more of an iced tea color, and sometimes a little murkier than that. I was just out Saturday. I had a trip actually reschedule, and I love being able to poke around by myself. So I went out on the skiff, and I was like, I'm gonna go find some juvenile tarpon. Jumped one nice one, and then all of a sudden, from underneath my boat, all these black drum just blow out from underneath me. I was like, where did you guys come from? So knowing black drum, like, you know what, they're going to stay here. I'm going to continue on, keep tarpon fishing. Got another tarpon, got a decent snook. And then I had my fly rod with me, and I was like, all right, I've caught plenty of drum on spin. I want to catch one on fly. So I snip my little tarpon fly off. I tie on a little crab fly that I got local from my guys over here. And I pull back up, creep in there, and sure enough, there's 20 of them just laid out, happy as can be. I sling that fly in there, and I'm just giving it long, slow drags. And all of a sudden, I just feel it stop. I set the hook. It was probably, 13, 14 pound drum.
Nice.
Really fun. I caught 2 on fly, 1 on spin. And I was like, I'm just going to leave them alone because they're just hanging out here. This is a good little spot. So within a very small area, I caught 3 nice drum, caught 1 tarpon, jumped 1 tarpon, and then caught about a 28-inch snook, all on artificial.
That's
really fun.
That's a great day.
And didn't see a boat all day, and it was Saturday.
Wow. So in that area, that's pretty common, right? I mean, it's very easy to get away from crowds.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. You can get away from people pretty easily. A lot of people, which is good fishing. I share those techniques with people often. When people ask for advice down there, I say, fish the outside points. A lot of people stay on the outside if it's not windy and fish the outside points. You know, a lot of the ones that have good hard bottom, they hold fish. You know, they hold your snook, your red, your trout, everything. So a lot of guys stick to that. So the backwater is usually pretty open. The only guys that are fishing the backwater are either guides or locals that know the area that have been fishing down there for a long time. So it is very easy to get away from people in that particular area.
So you're a guy that's known for offering help to a lot of other anglers. How did that start for you? Why do you give information so freely?
So that started a lot with Salt Strong as well. So I was posting those fish on there, you know, pretty good sized fish, and all of a sudden people were, you know, asking for my opinion on things. They'd say, "Hey, what lure was that you were using, or how are you working that lure?" So me being, I'm a nice guy. I'm not a D at all. So I go, yeah, I was using this lure on this hook. I'll snap a picture, and then, you know, I'll tell them, hey, give it a twitch with a pause. Really focus on that pause. And then all of a sudden I get someone messaging me back saying, hey, I just caught my first snook or my first tarpon with what you told me. And that was really rewarding. I actually really was taken back by that. I thought that was really cool. So I enjoy helping people. I don't think it's a bad thing. I know some of these old timer guides are very, you know, learn yourself, you know, figure it out. And my wife always says you get more bees with honey. So I feel like being the nice guy and helping people has gotten me where I am now and where I'm going, which I don't know where that is. I'm just enjoying the road as of right now, but I like helping people. It makes me feel good. That's it, you know?
Yeah. And did that translate into maybe you deciding that maybe guiding was something that you wanted to do?
It definitely helped, because it was all around the same time when people were, you know, asking to come fish with me and asking my opinion on lures or asking me for my advice. I started giving it. And then, yeah, it definitely was like, you know, I could do this on my boat. I could take people with me, you know, and I've done numerous trips where I've had people reach out and say, hey, I want to book a trip. I'm not interested in live bait. I want to work on my artificial. So I actually did like one-on-one coaching, you know, on my boat, showing them how to work the lure, how to read that fish's body language when you make that cast and that fish is chasing that lure. A lot of people just want to stop it and be like, okay, eat it. Well, I always say, you don't want to stop the lure. Imagine if you're getting chased by a lion. Are you just going to stop and tell him, you know, eat me? No, you're going to keep running. So you got to keep working that lure, and you just got to judge the speed of the lure by how that fish is reacting. And once you learn that, it's game on.
What do you think about, I mean, that in particular seems to be the difference between a good angler and a great angler. It seems to be the difference between even somebody that can be called an angler and somebody that is oblivious to that. Like, oh, there's a fish, I've thrown it over there, and they expect it to eat it. But like just somebody that knows what's up is like, no. Like that,
you got to make that.
Yeah. So like, where do you think that comes in someone's kind of education as a fisherman, to where they start to understand the fish and the way that this fish is eating and what they need the lure to look like? What do you think about that?
Honestly, I think a lot of it just boils down to time on the water. The more time you spend fishing and the more time you spend watching the fish, you start to figure it out. I've had days like in the wintertime this past year, we get the negative tides in the winter. So this winter was the first time I had my skiff. So I went to this area that I really like. It was super negative tide. And I was poling around and I was watching redfish feeding and tailing, and their backs are out of the water. And I'm watching snook cruising. And I probably went a good hour without even making a cast. I was just watching. I was poling and just sitting there, and I was just watching their movements and seeing how they reacted. And then finally I was like, okay, I want to catch a redfish. And by watching them, I made one cast. I could tell that they were wanting something, kind of running away. So it was a paddle tail. I didn't even, twitch it or anything. I just steadily reeled it. And that redfish just bolted and hammered it.
Yeah.
So it was cool. I like watching. I do that a lot. I'll just watch the fish and just see what they're doing.
Yeah, well, it's incredibly educational because sometimes you can see exactly what they're doing, like setting up an ambush. Or there was this really cool video. It was on Instagram today. I don't know if you follow this guy. He's Sport Fish Galleries, Adrian Gray.
Yeah. I love this stuff.
Did you see that video that he had today? And maybe it got picked up on another account, but anyway, it's his video, and it was of a snook hiding behind a rock, and there were all these bait fish coming around, and this snook is behind this rock, and then just at the right time, it goes up and it just kills these bait fish. But then it comes right back in and it sets up again, and it's like you watch that video and you're like, okay. That is super cool because you're always thinking, okay, well, there's probably a snook around that rock or whatever. But this was like, you could see how the bait fish were coming around, and most of them were not in harm's way. But then a couple of them would come into just a little further out, and that snook is just sitting there waiting. All of a sudden, it's just like, that's it right there. Bam. And when you see that, it's like, you can start to think in your head, like, okay, if I was fishing there, then that's what I need to do. And that's where it's like you've got clients on board and you're like, well, cast, to that rock.
Yeah.
Okay, cast again and again and again and again. And then one time, it's not even perceptible to you even, but it's like it's coming back a half an inch different than where it was last time, or maybe the wind blew the line over a little bit and it's pulling the lure around like this just a little bit, and all of a sudden it's like wham, like it's been waiting all day for that. When it has, like, it doesn't want to just because it's in the area doesn't mean that you're going to get the bite, right?
Nope,
it's got to be
that
just
danger
perfect.
zone.
And just by looking at the area, I mean, I guess there's some guides and anglers that are really good and they look at it and they're like, this is how it's going to go. But oftentimes it takes multiple casts, because it seems right. You have the ability to see that there's a good spot. There's going to be a fish there, but is it 2 inches this way or 2 inches this way? And so maybe you make multiple casts and then bam, it happens. But that video was perfect for that. I just thought it was really cool. I even commented on it. I was like, that's a cool video.
I didn't see that, but it reminds me of my tarpon fishing. Like I said, I try to stay on tarpon all year, and right now the big ones, they're easy to find. They're out front, they're in schools, and they're along the beaches and kind of in the backwater. But I like to stay on them all year, and I specifically like the 50-pound and under. I like the juvenile stuff. It's just it's a lot of fun. It's not going to kill your back, so my average person can jump a handful or catch a couple, and it's really fun. So I try to stay on those guys all year.
And are you able to, like, with all the cold fronts, is there some temperatures and some situations where you're not able to find those fish?
Yeah, it gets a little tough. I'd say January, February. It's a little tough, but they're in those creeks. And I've spent a lot of time studying the tarpon behavior to figure out, they don't just disappear. Fish, they just move to a certain place. If you can figure out where they move to, and for me in the wintertime, it seems like they like that dark backwater that's so dark that when the sun shines on it, it warms it up quicker. That's where they go hang out. That's where you find your bigger snook in the wintertime as well. So I've spent a lot of time doing that and then developing techniques to get them to eat. And one that I've been working on.
Let's talk about that.
Well, the couple of techniques that I've been working on for the past couple of years that is tried and true for me now because I've done it so much is when I see a tarpon roll, if I see him roll, I cast right on his head. And the reason for that is, in my theory personally, when that tarpon rolls and then he comes up and he starts going back down, I'll time my jig head to my water depth. So let's say it's 3 foot. So I'll use like a 1/8 ounce jig, like a super light jig that's going to land soft. And in my head, I'm thinking that tarpon comes up, he rolls, I cast that jig hits. That tarpon's going down and that jig's falling. It's going to be his idea to see that and hammer it. It's not like a force, like he's coming at me, let me cast it right at him, or he's coming this way, let's bring the lure right to him, because that's not natural. And that technique, if they don't hit it as it's falling, usually that first twitch and they're boom, they're hammering it, they're on it. And that technique has caught me a lot of fish and jumped a lot of fish. It's been a really good technique that's worked.
Yeah, I like what you said there, that it's his idea. And
exactly.
that's how we fish the big tarpon on the ocean side too, is like you got to cast so far in front of those fish to where they don't see the fly land in the water. And then you're bringing it in a way that the fish discovers the fly. Like you're not showing the fish the fly. You're putting the fly in a situation to where the fish discovers it, is just swimming along and goes, oh, what's that? Like
exactly. Make it his idea.
What's that? You know, like there's a big difference.
Why is it coming at me?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, make it their idea.
Yeah. Their idea. That's a big one. And that's what, you know, you can, I'm not a big fan of cats, but I have had a cat in the past, and you know, that cat is easy to play with when it's a kitten, and you can take a piece of string or anything and that kitten will come right over and play with it. But when that cat gets to be about 11 pounds and 11 years old, man, it sits over there and you throw something at it and it just looks at you like, you gotta be kidding me.
That's a good comparison.
But if you can see it, like I used to do this all the time with this cat, and if you could see the cat like go in there and eat its lunch or whatever, and then it's coming back around, you're like, okay, I'll get this cat to play with me today, right now, because it's going to come around this couch like it always does. You can't see this, and the string's going to be there when the cat comes around this couch. And then I'm going to move it so slowly, and he's going to come around that couch, and it's going to be his idea to pounce on that. And so you set up this ambush, right? And it's the same thing that happens with fish, and the same understanding that if you want to catch the big one, they're like that old cat, man. They're not just going to jump on anything. Yeah. It's got to be something that's really interesting, something that in a lot of cases they didn't expect. Like that wasn't there just a second ago. Like, nope. Where did that come from? That's got to be the stupidest little minnow in the world. Like, you know what I mean? Like you got to set that ambush up. I like that, what you said about that, like making sure.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't know about I wouldn't recommend my technique in the Keys. That probably wouldn't work out too well. But back in that dark, dirty water, it works. Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure it would though. You know, we have water like that too. You know, up in
I guess
almost our water fishes starts to intersect a little bit. Like you're probably getting down to the Shark River, and we're getting up to the Shark River, and then you know, it's kind of, there's a lot of the similar kind of stuff. But even in the super clear water of the lower Keys, there are situations where you're getting in that kind of tannic water where the tide is going out and it's pushing that tannic water out of the mangroves, and it looks like iced tea, you know, and the fish are in there pretty good.
I've experienced that down there fishing out of the Marauda.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what about the snook? How do you see the differences between fishing for tarpon and fishing for snook?
Snook, I fish. So when I go for the big snook, I like my live bait. It's just a way to guarantee my clients good fish. So I'm fishing, you know, spots where I know they're hanging out, and I like big baits for that. Like I can go to places where I know, okay, I know my big snook are sitting here. I'm going to throw either big pilchard, or this time of year, I actually like threads. A lot of guys hate threads because they just don't stay lively. But if you know exactly where the fish are, you don't need them to be lively. You only need, you know, maybe 3 casts, and then you let that bait do its thing, and boom, that's it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I like for those. And then the backwater, a lot of lures. Sometimes I'll start, like if I'm fishing dark water, sometimes I'll break that old rule, dark water, dark lure. I'll throw a bright white paddle tail back there, and they'll fire up and hammer it. And then sometimes they want a dark color. It just depends. Usually have both tied up. Mm-hmm. One thing I don't do that I learned from a good guide in my area who gave me this recommendation. He said, I never take live bait to my backwater spots. He's like, if those fish are chewing on lures really well, and you start bringing pilchards back there every day, you're going to ruin them. They're going to be honed in on those pilchards. It's all they're going to want. You're going to make them really finicky. And right now they're not finicky. You can throw a paddle tail at them, and they act like they've never seen the thing before. And he's like, I took that advice and I was like, that makes complete sense. Like, I love that. That's genius. But I was like, oh, I got my skiff now. I'm going to go throw my net, get some pilchards and bring them to the backwater. And I'm glad I didn't do it because I was like, you know what? That makes complete sense. Don't bring them back there. They're not eating pilchards. They're not eating pilchards back there. You know what I mean? So bringing them back there would almost spoil them.
Right. They sure would like to, though.
Oh, I'm sure it'd probably be insane fishing, but after a while, I think they would tune in on that. And then when the bait's hard to get, now what?
Yeah.
That's one thing. Actually, speaking of, when I first started guiding, I was the bait. I had to have that live bait. My clients, I want to have a good time. I had to get that live bait. And it was just about 2 years ago, I finally broke out of that and was able to have great days, catch quality fish without using live bait. So it took that bait grind off of me. Like I obviously that's number one. If I can go out, throw the net, get my pilchards, that's, okay, guaranteed my clients are gonna have a good time. But if you can't do that, which there's certain times of the year that gets tough, you got to have that plan B. And for me, it's been really dialing in jigs and shrimp. So it doesn't matter the skill level. You don't have to be good at fishing lures. I can get you good fish just using a simple jig and shrimp, which is a tried and true technique in our area. A lot of guys fish it all year round. So that was a really great turning point for my guiding career, was when I broke out of that live bait bubble and was able to produce fish outside of that.
Have you been having trouble getting any live shrimp right now in your area?
Yes.
There were none in the Keys just recently.
I heard that.
It's been very, very tough to get the live shrimp. You got to be first there, and then it doesn't last very long, and then the shrimp truck's not really coming regularly. I don't know why that is necessarily.
I don't know what's going on. I know in the summertime it's normal for them to get small, but there's been a shortage of shrimp, and then they're extremely small to where they're almost pointless. So I just do frozen shrimp on a jig if I have to, and that works just as good.
So your frozen shrimp, are you just buying those like today, or are you catching shrimp?
No, I'm just buying them.
There were some guys in the Keys that were, the shrimp got really tough, and they were going out and they were netting them at night. Okay. And then they were freezing them themselves and taking a real, being real careful about packing them and vacuum sealing them and then freezing them and having them for the times in the summertime when it was really tough. And they were lasting so much better than those other ones that I don't know if they're mishandled or they're just getting smashed or how long they sit before they freeze. But I mean, these guys were freezing these. They were probably still alive when they were vacuum packing them, and then they're freezing them, and they would only put like 6 or 8 in a bag, and they were dynamite. They really stayed on the hook. They looked great.
That's good.
Yeah, and bonefish were eating them. It was great. I mean, it takes a lot of work, but it's if we continue to get these shrimp shortages, that's certainly something that works very well.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that sometimes with ladyfish. If I'm on a trip and we're catching, ladyfish is a bycatch, no matter what you're doing. Catch a couple of those, I'll throw them in the live well, take them home, and I'll freeze them just in case, one of those days pops up where, the shrimp sucks, the bait's tough, maybe it's blowing 20 miles an hour out of the west and it's terrible. Throw some chunks in a couple spots and usually produce some nice fish. Usually if it's a redfish or a snook, it's going to be a upper or over slot. It's going to be a decent fish.
So there's probably some people out there that don't quite understand. Why don't you explain that, how you're taking a frozen ladyfish and finding the area that you want to use them in and how you're using those chunks.
So what I'll do is usually, obviously with me, I'll go to an area where I know fish are holding because I know they're there. And then I like to take basically, take your pointer finger and take your thumb, put them together. I like to start with a chunk like that big. Put it on maybe a 3/0 hook. I'll start with no weight, depending on where it is. Cast it over there and just let it sit in the weight. And usually, like I said, if it gets picked up by a fish, it's a good size fish that picks it up. They like those chunks, ladyfish. So that's basically how I fish them.
That's a technique where you do not have to see the fish. I mean, it helps if it helps if you've caught fish there before, but like if you find a shoreline that looks really good and you throw that over near the shoreline, like I like to, if I'm doing that, I like to try to get it almost under the bushes.
Yeah, exactly. Under the trees. Yep.
Right. But how long are you letting it sit there before you decide this might be unproductive?
Well, the whole spot, I probably only give about 20 minutes. If you don't get, one good run in 30 minutes, you're probably not going to get anything there. Or if I get, 3 catfish in between, I'm like, all right, we're just going to move somewhere else and try. Because that's another thing where you said going into mangroves. You got to go into mangroves to stay away from the catfish. You get someone who casts, 6-8 feet off of mangroves. I'm like, that's catfish territory. You want to be in those trees. 30 minutes probably, because that style of fishing is not my favorite personally. I've used it in tournaments because it produces big fish. I've used it to, put some fish on the board for clients when the bait was terrible. But yeah, I mean, if I don't get one within 20 or 30 minutes, I'm probably either going to go back to a shrimp and jig or just change technique or change spots altogether.
But for a lot of people that don't really have a lot of spots, that can be, knowing a technique like that can be incredibly good, because if it's blowing, you guys don't have the problem when it's really blowing like we do, because you have so many shorelines that can be sheltered. In the lower Keys, we have a lot of islands, but not all. I mean, you don't have they don't call it 10,000 islands for nothing. Like you got a lot of islands. So, but for people that have limited spots, knowing a technique like that of either using a ladyfish or cut up pinfish or whatever you're going to do, mullet, that can be a day saver, big time.
Oh yeah,
on a windy day.
Oh yeah.
What kind of bottom? When you're looking at that earlier, you said that you were looking for these points with hard bottom. Is that something that you would be looking for with that technique?
Yeah, that technique worked there too, because that's where those fish are staging up and they're feeding. So you throw a nice chunk bait in there, that's just an easy meal for them to suck that thing up and take off with it. That would for sure work.
Up there, you're going to catch redfish and snook, and are you going to catch tarpon like that too?
You'll catch tarpon like that. You'll catch big trout like that as well. You catch all of them. Yeah, you could grand slam on chunk bait, really.
Yeah. What about Goliath Grouper? Do you see those under the bushes?
Yeah. They like to hang out in the high current areas, high current, high structure. Maybe some bait fish flowing through there. Holes, basically. Your 6, 8 foot, 10 foot deep holes. You can get them out of there. They've been. Do
you like fishing for those?
They're fun. I think they're underrated. Those backwater.
I really love them.
Yeah,
I do.
They trick me every time. They trick me when I'm throwing lures. I've had a couple, and I'll be looking for redfish, and I don't know if it's just me, but every time one thumps my lure, it feels like a redfish. That feels like a red.
Yeah, it's a heavy thump.
It's a heavy thump, and I'm like, that feels like a good red. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, that's not acting like a red. Something's weird, and then that big grouper comes up. Yeah, those backwater ones are fun. I've got clients that catch those, and they get a kick out of catching those things.
Well, I always thought that I kind of happened upon that fishery by accident almost, because it's blowing 30 and your client says, well, I don't want to sit in the hotel room, so I don't care if we catch anything or not. I'd rather
let's go.
So it's like, okay, we're going. And it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Because it's not going to be bonefish, permit, or tarpon. I can tell you that. It's literally blowing 30. We're going to have to go up against the bushes. And it's like, well, do you want to go snapper fishing? They're like, sure, I'll go snapper fishing. And you get up on some of those shorelines. What is that? You can see something moving under there. And then I started catching these little baby Goliath groupers. And then I started people were having such a good time with it, because most of those people were bass fishermen. Like you were telling me your story about being a bass fisherman and catching your snook, which is way bigger than any bass you ever caught. That's how these people were with the Goliath grouper. They were like, I don't know why you guys don't fish for these things. This is the biggest bass I've ever caught. You catch you catch a 12-pound Goliath grouper, which is not a big one at all. And it's a huge largemouth bass and really fun. So I don't know. I started fishing for them. And then I was incredibly disappointed around 2010 when we had the big cold front.
Freeze.
Yeah, and it really knocked them back. I mean, really knocked them back. But just lately, we just did a show. Purposefully went after the small Goliath groupers. And it's kind of funny because that was one of the most popular shows that we ever did, was a happenstance show. It's like, okay, well, we've already caught bonefish and permit and tarpon. What are we going to do now? And I was like, I don't know. I guess we could go catch these Goliath groupers under the bushes. And Rich was like, what? What are you talking about? I'm like,
that's cool.
Well, let's go over here and do it. And we just got this amazing footage. The water was super clear, and we had a GoPro down there. And I think this might have even been before GoPros. We had a camera in a housing, and we got this great footage. And then we were catching these fish, and we had so much response to that show. I just think that's a very underrated fish.
They're a lot of fun.
Goliaths. Yeah,
a lot of fun, and people haven't caught them, like you said. It's exciting. You hook a decent one. Like I've had a couple, 20, 30 pounders that have popped a jerk bait, and they're like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah,
you pull it up, and
if you could figure out how to, fish artificials for those things and catch them regularly and as often as you could on bait, that'd be. I've been
getting them. I would say most of the ones I've caught recently, I'm going to say, have been on artificial, on nice. Like black and pink paddle tail.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know what they like to eat? They like crabs.
Oh yeah. Oh man. I took my wife fishing recently. She wanted to catch a permit. She's never caught a permit. And it was the Friday before 4th of July weekend. So we both had the day off. I'm like, all right, let's go try this. We'll get half a dozen crabs. We'll go try it. Took her, my 2 daughters, it was family day. We went and hit some of the offshore stuff, and we're floating crabs back, and she hooks a monster, and I'm like, oh, that's pulling kind of weird. And I think it was a big Goliath. It broke her off. And then she floats another one back and catches like a 38-inch snook, which I've never had a snook eat a crab personally, but it hammered it. And then she caught a 30, and we had one good permit run, and I was worried about the Goliath, so I told her to put a lot of pressure on it, and she pulled the hook. So I'd rather have it pulled hook than have the Goliath eat it. So
right.
Oh well, she was happy with her bycatch.
Yeah. That's an area that you have a tremendous amount of permit and Goliaths on some of those wrecks and structure offshore, right?
And big snook as well. And big reds in the wintertime.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've never fished those up there in the wintertime. I just try to avoid long runs in the wintertime.
That's a run. Yeah, that's a run for you. And if that wind kicks up, that's going to be a fun ride back.
Yeah, it can be. But I'll have to check out those big redfish out there in the wintertime.
Yeah.
How do you fish for those?
They get on those wrecks too. Paddle tails, artificial shrimps, bait if you can get it, the pilchards down the bottom on a split shot. It's mostly snook and your Goliaths, but you do get the reds. Like when they start doing their migration, you'll randomly come across schools of them just hanging out on some of those wrecks and reefs.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So basically bycatch.
All right. So as a guide that's kind of getting started and you get your captain's license as a first step, and then how do you start to develop customers? How did you do it?
So with me, I gotta say, social media was a big part of it for me. Some guys don't like social media. Some of these old charter captains don't like it, but for me, I feel like there's a lot of pros and cons of social media, and I feel like there's more pros than cons. And as I started to make a small name for myself, I started getting a lot of people from social media, and then it was a lot of word of mouth. Even currently, I'm still strictly social media and word of mouth, and it's been working really well. And I think, call it some of the nosy guides. There's a couple. Every area has their handful of guys that are just not happy. And I've had people ask me straight to my face, "How are you getting trips?" And I'm like, social media and word of mouth, man. I'm not stealing any work from you. I just do my own thing, and I fish because it's fun, and I don't want any part of the drama. And my 2 cents on that is, if guides in your area are, giving you crap, it's probably because 1, they're maybe not that good at fishing and they're intimidated by you, or 2, maybe they're not that great with their people skills, and as a whole, they're not a good guide and they're intimidated by you. Because I can tell you, the guides that are good at what they do not care what you're doing. I got Jeff Legucki, perfect example. Jeff Legucki, he's awesome, and he's a local guide in my area. Jeff doesn't give a crap what I'm doing. He doesn't care that I've been guiding a couple of years in the same area as him. He doesn't care because he's good at what he does. The guys that care, I just think they're intimidated by you personally.
Well, maybe they could be intimidated, or they could just be frustrated that it seems like they're doing all the right things, but the trips just aren't coming their way. But maybe there needs to be a little introspection of why are the trips not coming your way?
Why are the trips?
Did you get mad at some previous customers, or
exactly?
Do you show up late, or like, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it your professionalism? Is it your attitude?
Exactly.
Is it your conversational skills? Is this, are you looking at this as a fishing tournament, or are you looking at this as an entertainment business?
Exactly. So with fishing, what I've learned, and I learn every year, I strive every year to be better and to become better and to get better. And with fishing and people skills, and my people skills are fairly good. I'm good with people. And I think that's what gets my clients to come back. I show them a good time. They catch fish and like, this guy was a lot of fun. He didn't care that I got caught in the tree 4 times. He made, whatever. 400. Let's just call it. He didn't care if we got caught in the trees. And which I have a funny thing for that. When someone gets caught in the trees, a lot of times, they're embarrassed. They're like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. It's part of the game. I always say, if you're not getting stuck in the trees, you're not trying hard enough. You're not trying to get in there hard enough. And then I'm like, depending on how their attitude is, like if they're kind of laughing with me, I'll go, and it's fine because we'll just send the county a bill for trimming the trees. And they usually get a kick out of it. They laugh at that. So a lot of the fishing, what I've learned is the fish are a bonus. So when people go fishing with you, they're going on an adventure with you. They're on vacation. They're taking a day off work. They just want to have fun. They do not want to be yelled at. They don't want to be like, why'd you blow that shot? Why'd you miss that fish? They just want to have fun. And if you can make it as fun as possible and joke around and catch some fish too, I think that's what brings them back. And that's what I try to do, is just sell them an adventure. Like, you're going to have a good time with me and we're just going to have fun. And I'm not going to yell at you. If you miss a fish, it is what it is. It's part of that's fishing. And I'm not going to, some guys get really into it. And I can see that because there's some days where, I've had people blow shots at really nice fish. And as a guide, I want you to catch that fish. So I'm like bummed out, but at the same time, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm going to say, okay, let's try again, or let's go try another fish. Or we'll move on. We'll carry on. We'll make it happen whatever way we need to.
Well, that's really the difference between somebody that's kind of playing the long game. Excuse me. Somebody that's playing the long game and thinking about, okay, I'm trying to make this my career. I want that person to catch this fish worse than they do. So much worse than they do.
Been there.
Is it going to help for me to yell at this person? Is this person going to want to come back if I get upset? No, it's not.
No.
The only thing that I can do in this situation is to be the coolest guy that I can possibly be. Put my ego aside. I would have loved to have posted that picture to social media. I would have loved to have told the guys at the dock that we caught the biggest fish of the year.
Yeah.
All of those things. But that's all ego driven. Like, that's all like, you want that for some reason. But it's like the guy that's wondering how you're getting the trips. Well, maybe they're catching consistently. They catch better fish than you, but the guy has to get, yelled at all day to catch that giant fish. And it's like, I don't even want this. I'd rather not catch anything than go out and get yelled at. I could get yelled at home, and it worked. Like, this is what I'm doing out here. But I think it's kind of interesting that you have that perspective so easily. And maybe it's because it wasn't very long ago that you were a working person yourself. And like, the last thing you want to do is go out and get yelled at. Like, you're trying to have a good time, right?
Trying to relax. Exactly. You know what? Another thing, actually, a trip I just did last year, I'll never forget it because it was like an eye opener to me. I was very focused on the fish. I've always been really focused on the fish. Like, that was number one. And I took him and his buddy. The one guy was very good with artificial, and his buddy was not good at fishing at all, which is fine. I can do all skill levels. So take them, and we catch a couple snook, and his buddy, jumped the tarpon. That technique I told you, the tarpon rolled. I said, just cast right over there. He cast right on it, twitched it. Tarpon hammered it. He doesn't fish very much, so he missed the hook set. Tarpon jumped, flung the lure. I was like, well, he thought that was pretty cool. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's move. It seems like these guys have kind of chilled out, so let's carry on. And as we're idling out, they're just chatting, and the buddy goes, man, it's so peaceful out here. I could not catch a fish the rest of the day and I'd be perfectly happy. And that was like an aha moment for me. I was like, man, this guy, he's just happy to be out here. Like, the fish are just a bonus to him. So it really just took the pressure off. I was like, they already caught some fish, and we went on to catch more fish, but it was just cool that, it's easy to get wrapped up in the fish and forget that some people are just really happy to be out in your area and getting to see, your area where you're from.
Right.
And the fish are a bonus.
I think
so. That was cool.
Good guides, like you mentioned, Jeff, he's obviously a very, very good guide, has an amazingly good reputation. A lot of guides in the Keys, they're not just good fishermen, but a lot of people that have this stellar reputation and their clients couldn't imagine fishing with somebody else. It's always because, or it's not always because, but a lot of times it's because they know other things than fishing. Like they know when to keep their mouth shut. Like when that guy is saying, wow, it is just so peaceful right here. I could just sit here for an hour and then all of a sudden you put the power pole down right there. You turn the motor off and you say, cool, let's eat some lunch, Yeah.
And then there you go. Yeah.
He's like, really? Right here? We could just sit here? Yeah, sure, man. No problem. Whatever you want to do. It's your day. Okay. Cool.
Exactly.
And then instead of telling 35 jokes at lunch, you just be quiet and you realize, you look over at the guy and he's like, this is the first time in 6 months that this guy's been quiet. Like he's probably the CEO of some company. He's got people asking him questions every
pressure
30
all day.
seconds. He's answering text messages. Look at him. He doesn't have his phone. He's completely peaceful. And then later, like a big aha moment for me is doing something like that and having coming back to the dock and them saying, you know what, that lunch, that just rejuvenated
made
me.
My day.
Yeah, that was the best. Never mind that he caught 4 tarpon, and 2 permit and a bonefish. And he doesn't talk about that. He's like,
bonus.
That lunch was amazing. And you know why? Because I didn't say anything. That's what he wanted. He wanted to be really super quiet. But I don't know. It's like the perception. It's like being, having the ability to kind of understand that, I think is a superpower of some guys.
Yes.
That just understand, okay, this is not necessarily about catching the big fish. Now, I may have this same person and he may be my angler for a tournament and it's going to be a different deal. Like
it's going to be a little bit different. Yeah.
That is about fishing in a tournament and that's what that guy wants to do. But today,
a little more pressure.
Today he's chill and he wants to
chill and fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You did a podcast with Benny Blanco and he said that. He said, basically reading your clients and asking them. I started applying that technique. And basically when I get someone that inquires about a charter, my first question is, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? Are you interested in just going out, live bait, catching whatever? Or do you want to fish backcountry, snook and tarpon? What do you want to do? Because that's the number one question you should be asking, as a guide, if you're getting into this, is you need to know what your people want. Because I might be on an overslot snook bite and they might want to catch snappers. And I might go put them on all these fish and they're like, well, we caught some cool snook, but that's not what we wanted to catch. Mm-hmm. So it's really being able to read your customer and know what they want, what the client wants.
Well, I have a story that I've told a couple of times before about that. And sometimes you think you know what your customer wants. In this certain instant, I always thought that one of the reasons why I had any success was because of my telephone skills prior to the trip. I would ask people the same kind of questions you're asking, like, what is it that you want to do? Because I want to have the right tackle. I want to make sure that I have whatever's required. I want to make sure that if you're going to show up with 4 people, you're not going to be disappointed because my boat only holds 2. I want to know all the details. And then I'm not afraid to push that trip off onto somebody who is better prepared for that. You want to take kids fishing? That's not going to be on a skiff. I'm not prepared for that. So I would ask a lot of questions. One time I asked a bunch of questions and the guy said, well, I want to go bone fishing. And I said, great. And he knew some of the language. It sounded like he knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So he shows up and we go bone fishing and I am working my tail off back there, poling. I'm pointing them out. We're finding them. And he gets a lot of shots for the Keys, like maybe 20 shots in a morning of fishing, right?
Jeez, on a half day.
And I'm like, this is great. And so he goes, man, I'm getting kind of hungry. So we just start floating along. I'm like, well, let's take a break. So we start floating along and we float over near a mangrove island with a ditch. And he looks down and goes, what are those? And I said, oh, those are snappers. And he goes, can I catch those? I said, sure. He's got a shrimp on his rod. He puts it in the water, catches one, puts another shrimp on, catches another. He says, why haven't we been catching these? And I said, well, you told me you wanted to go bone fishing. He goes, well, aren't we bone fishing? And I said, well, I mean, those are snappers. And he goes, oh, I thought bone fishing was just being on a boat like this. I thought this was a bonefish boat. And all of a sudden funny. It's like, oh, I guess I didn't ask enough questions. Like, do you know that a bonefish is actually a fish? Like, he just wanted to go out in a small boat and catch fish. On a skiff. And so we sat there, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't need to be poling into the wind anymore. Like, and he sat there and caught as many snappers as we had shrimp, and he was perfectly happy. And that's that awesome. One trip taught me a lot about asking questions and making sure that you understand, because man, that guy was happy as he could be. And I don't think he even saw one bonefish that I saw earlier in the day. Like, I'm not sure his glasses were polarized. I'm not sure that he wasn't seeing them, and it wasn't fun. And that's not what he wanted to do.
Yeah. And it's good. So on that same note, you said being able to give, if you have a 6-person charter, which you can't do, you give them away. So that's the thing too, is I really specialize in the thrill of the hunt. I wanted the bigger fish, the picture worthy, hang on the refrigerator, what have you. And so over the past couple of years, I've been really strictly catch and release. And for a while I caught crap for that. A lot of guys were like, how are you going to catch and release only? Like, you're going to have to some people want to eat fish. I'm like, I understand that. I like fish, and I do target certain species, certain times of the year that you can take home, but that's not what I'm about. So it works out fine because I can stick to what I want to stick to. And then the trips where people just want to fill a cooler, which I don't do those, I can refer to my buddies or guides that have gotten close to me over the years that know what I'm about. I go, hey, give him a call. He'll do that for you. So I can basically keep that client happy, but you can go with someone else that wants to do that style of fishing. And it's worked out well for me over the past few years. Like I said, people usually know what I'm about, and that's what they want to do. Now, I have gotten a few that have been referred to me that were like, hey, we want to fill the cooler. I'm like, I don't personally do that style of fishing. I'm more into snook and tarpon. If you want to do that, I can help you. If not, I'm going to refer you to, someone around here that can definitely put you on the fish to fill your cooler with.
Yeah. It could also, I mean, you don't want to necessarily hurt anybody's feelings, because that guy could come back to you.
Yeah,
like, look,
exactly.
I'm not really set up for that. Like I'm in a little boat. I don't have a big live well. I do catch and release. This he's perfectly set up for it. If you decide you want to come back and hunt some big snook, that's what I'm doing right now. That's what turns my crank, and that's cool. And people appreciate a referral over to someone if it's handled correctly.
Yes.
I mean, you can blow that opportunity too. You can be like,
yes,
I'm not going to do that. You'd have to be I don't know. You could be real ugly on the phone like that. But if you could also be super nice. You send them to the right person. They have a great trip. They continue to fish with that guy. They also fish with you. Great. Everybody's happy.
I've had that happen. I've sent people to a guy to, do their cooler trip. And they said, hey, when I called you, you said you were really into snook and tarpon. I'd love to catch one of those. Never caught one. They come back and they fish with me, and they're like, that was a lot of fun. And then they can go back and forth, and it works out.
Everybody's happy. Good. So when people are looking for a charter, what do you think the most important questions to ask a prospective guide are?
Definitely, what are you interested in? Like, what do you? Well, like, once you get on the boat,
the customer, like the customer's calling a guide. Like, do you have? A lot of people think that maybe the most important question is, do you have Thursday open? Well, if that's not the right guide, like, how do you know if you were a customer? What kind of questions would you be asking the guide to make sure that you got the trip that you wanted?
Okay, yeah. So if I was a customer, if I was calling you, Tom, hey, Tom, I want a trip, I would say, first of all, I have to figure out what I want to catch. Like, let's say, I've always wanted to catch a bonefish. Let's pretend. I'm going to say, how's the bonefish bite right now? Is the bonefish bite good? Are you confident that you can put me on some bonefish today? And if they say, yeah, I'm pretty confident we can make that happen, I think that's an important question, is figure out what you want to catch and then ask whatever guide you're going to call, what are the chances of me catching this particular fish? Like, can we do it, or is it a maybe? And what do you have for a backup? What's the plan B if those fish aren't cooperating? What do you have in mind? And then you give them what you have in mind, and if they're into it, boom, that's it. I think just making them catch what they're interested in catching, pretty much.
Yeah, and also the tackle too. Like if you got a guy that all he wants to do is fly fish, and you don't have any fly rods, that's not something that you do. I mean, there's going to be somebody that's better prepared for that, and you can probably put them exactly with the right person.
Yeah, I don't do personally a lot of fly stuff. I really love fly fishing, but I am no professional fly angler, so I don't personally feel confident taking someone on a fly only trip, only because I can't coach you. You know what I mean? If you can't make the cast and it's not working, I can verbally say, hey, try to lead them more, but your actual physical cast, I might not have the skills to say what you're doing wrong. So I don't do fly only. I've had plenty of guys that are like, hey, if they're chewing really well, can I throw a fly? I'm like, yeah, I'll throw a fly out on the boat. If the bite's there and you can make the cast, sure, of course. And I've, have done that. It's been fun, but I would personally never do a fly only because my abilities of fly fishing are limited. I'd rather push on. There's plenty of guys in this area that do fly only, and I'd be happy to send them the fly only stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the way. I mean, that's the way to do it, and is not to be so desperate that you have to take any trip that comes your way, and really try to get the client with the right guide for him or her, and then the trips that the type of fishing that you want to do will come your way too, and that guy will get a guy that says, hey, all I want to do is throw lures at big tarpon. And he'll say, I know just the guy for you. And
exactly. See, I wish the guides that were, not the most cooperating could see that, one hand feeds the other. I might be getting trips that I don't necessarily want to do, and I'll be happy to refer them to you. And then I got a buddy who's got a bigger boat. He can fit like 6 people. So a lot of my cooler filler trips, I'll refer to him, and he does do inshore, but he doesn't specialize in, snook and tarpon like I do. And when he gets people that, might be one guy that wants to catch snook and tarpon, he'll be like, hey, go with this guy. He'll put you on them. And then I'll say, hey, go with this guy. He'll put you on the, the groupers and the snappers and all that. So one hand feeds the other. I mean? We can all work off of each other if we just can communicate and be civil.
Right. Well, let's hope so. So let's my final question to you is if you had, you got a blue sky plan for the next 5 years, where would you like to see your guide service, or what would you like to be doing for the next,
good.
Fast forward to 5 years. How would you like to see it?
Fast forward to 5 years. But my goal right now that I have in mind is I'm really focusing, like I said earlier, just becoming the best I can be. And I would like to be just one of those names. When you think of Southwest Florida, I'm hoping in the next 5 years, I'll be one of those names that pops into your head. Maybe let's call it top 5, maybe top 3. Who knows? I want to be one of those guides that you think of when you think of Naples, Marco Island, 10,000 Islands. And then from there, I just like following the road. I've always been interested in the TV part. Like I wouldn't be opposed to, shows or all that stuff. That's always intrigued me. I actually listened to your podcast with you and Peter Miller, who I've also met. He's a really, really cool dude. I like him a lot. And you were saying how there's so much behind the scenes stuff that people don't see. That's tough. And I'd love to learn the inner workings of the TV show. I think that's pretty cool. So basically, just becoming the best guide I can be. I'd like to be a name in this area, and then maybe do some TV stuff. Would be really fun next 5 years.
Right on. Cool. Well, you're off to a very good start. You got a great reputation. You have been recommended to me for the podcast a number of times. So thank you for spending the time with us today. And if people wanted to go fishing with you or want to follow you on social media or whatever, how would they do that?
On social media, I have Captain.Justin Napior, just spelled out Justin Napior. That's my Instagram. And then I have just Justin Napior on on Facebook. And then my website is backcountryculture.com.
Backcountryculture.com. Right on. Okay, Justin. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it, and good luck to you. And this will be out shortly, so I appreciate your time, and good luck with those backcountry tarpon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate you having me.
All right. We'll see you.